that we have today. So welcome everyone to the webinar for the City of Milwaukee 2020-2024 HUD Consolidated Plan. This is an overview of the public draft, which has now been posted. So we are glad to have you here with us. I'm Christy Luzar, and I'm the Executive Director at the Urban Economic Development Association. So I'm going to go through some logistics. So I'm your host, and then we also have a few others here today that helped us with the putting together this plan. So we have Steve Mahan from the City of Milwaukee, Community Development Grants Administration, Mario Higgins, also from there, and then Tim Scythe and Una Vandeval and Jessica Wetzel, who are part of our project team. For the logistics, we do have closed captioning available, so you will find that near the bottom, I think, of your Zoom if you would like to use that. Please stay muted and use speaker view. Sometimes that helps, particularly with the slides. If you have any questions, put them in the chat or Q&A, and we will answer as many as we can throughout the presentation. And yes, we will share the recording and the slides for today's webinar. So we'll email them to all those that registered, but they'll also be posted at the Complan website and at UWIDA's website.
Excuse me, Christy, before you get started, I seen a comment that someone said there was no sound. Can we check to make sure that's on?
Okay, I was gonna say I'm unmuted. Can everybody else hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Because then I was like, that might be out of my my technical expertise. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we will get started. Today's agenda. So today we are going to provide an overview of the plan, and really sort of this will be more of a high level, because at the end of the day we want you to actually go in and look at the plan. So we'll give you sort of a sense of the process that we used, the purpose, what the plan encompasses, all the different sections, and then we will talk through some of the key findings. We know a lot of you on the webinar today and on our network are probably very familiar with a lot of the issues and the data that is part of this plan. But, so I don't know if there'll be any surprises per se, but I think the way we think about some of these things has changed. And so we'll also demonstrate how to access the draft. We're using technology as we are today in a lot of different ways, and provide comment, and then really talk about and encourage you to share and encourage public comment for the plan. Okay, so we are going to do a couple polls just to kind of get a sense of who's here. So first poll is, have you heard of the Consolidated Plan before today's webinar? And I'd like to think, but we never know. Maybe you saw it and we're like, what's that? So I'll wait till we have a critical mass here. We're getting close. All right, I'm gonna end the poll. Oops. So today, most of you have heard of the plan, which is what we had sort of expected, because we know that a lot of you are really engaged actually in our community input process. But at the same time, we've got a good third of you have not. So this is going to be hopefully a good overview for you and what to expect. Okay, so now I have to relaunch. This is where. Okay. Oh, whoops, no. Sorry, I have to pick the next question. This is where it's clear Christy is doing this for the first time. All right, now the next question is, did you fill out a community input survey or participate in one of our focus groups in any way to help that helped shape this plan? Because the community input process actually is a big part of the Consolidated Plan. And note, public comment for the public draft is also another way to provide input. So there are many opportunities. Okay. As I look at the results, see, we're getting close to a critical mass. So I think I'm going to end it now. So yes, there's a lot of you that maybe didn't fill out a survey the first time around or come to a focus group. So this is your chance. We really do value the input that people have on the issues that are, oh, sorry about that. I need to share the results so you can all see it. You know, in terms of the issues that are in the plan, particularly around housing and economic opportunity. So, all right, well, thank you for participating. Appreciate that. Okay, so now we're going to launch into the plan, and we're going to have Steve and Mario talk a little bit from the city perspective of the purpose of the plan, why we do it, and all of that fun stuff.
First and foremost, this is Stephen Mahan, the Grants Director for the City of Milwaukee. I am just honored to be able to get on this platform, and I'm just really pleased to see how many participants we have, because we know this has been a very hard path that we've had to take in the last couple of months, and even up to a year now, to get to this point. And UITA has been a great steward to get this plan out, even through some of the difficulties we've had to endure this past year. It's a very well laid out plan. It's a requirement for HUD, but it is something that everyone should want to be involved with. And those who have not been involved with the consolidated plan process, which you easily could not have, because it is a 5-year plan. This actually is even affecting us right now as far as our HUD resources for COVID and our formula for what we receive to address pandemics. So this is very important. And I'm just glad to see that the importance is showing with the number of individuals that are involved. So I'm going to pass it to Mario, but I do have to say that on behalf of the City of Milwaukee and Mayor Tom Barrett and the Common Council of the City of Milwaukee, we're thankful for so many people paying attention and getting involved in what is a plan that will guide us. And it is malleable, but it will guide us for the next 5 years. So thank you very much. Mario.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mario Higgins. I'm the Associate Director, and thanks again to everyone who is on the call, and thanks to Wita and her team, Christy and her team, for all of the work that they have put in all along. I say you, Wita, I'm sorry. All the work they've put in over the last year and a half. This has been a pretty time-consuming process. COVID did not make this any easier at all, but I think we had most of our community meetings and all those things out before COVID hit, so that helped out a lot. You know, so we did spend a lot of time then just wrestling with all of the data and the narrative that'll be going into the plan. So to give an idea of like what the consolidated plan is, it's very similar to what a business may do or an organization may do to along the lines of a strategic plan. I think one of the major differences is that the consolidated plan is going to ask for input from cross sectors within the community. So we're going to be dealing with residents, nonprofits, businesses, you know, all types of other stakeholders that that are out there that have, you know, that work in our communities or deal with any types of issues that are going on. The consolidated plan is designed to help the city to assess their affordable housing and community development needs and market conditions, and to make market-driven, place-based investment decisions. So when it comes to housing and jobs and all those other things that we sort of try to affect, it tries to bring all those things together. The consolidated planning process should serve as a framework for a community-wide dialogue. So that's why we have so many meetings and so much input in order to make sure we're at least hearing all of the different ideas, so we can all try to work towards a strategic goal. So it's not always just based on what the city has to do, but hopefully we can use this plan. People can use it as a framework for anything that they're doing out in the community. The consolidated plan is carried out through our annual action plan. So this is like a 5-year plan, but then every year we have to do an annual action plan. So it's like 1/5 of what the plan is. And that's going to set the goals for the program and what we have to do. And then after that, every year also we have to do a CAPER. And the CAPER stands for the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. And that's going to tell us how we did on any particular year towards getting towards those goals and meeting those goals. So, sometimes, you may do well in one sector, whether it's employment or housing, one year, and some years you may fall short depending on what's going on in the market and what's happening. So I think that's a broad overview. If anybody has any questions, I'd be willing to ask.
Thank you, Mario. So we had a couple of slides up there that showed, sort of what the HUD, I guess, parameters are for the plan. So, you see there's some national objectives and program goals, and it really is a way to steer how federal entitlement funds are allocated. And then, but one thing, we talked about this a lot throughout the process, is to say, this plan actually can really assist the city in terms of justifying when it seeks out additional federal resources. And so you see a lot of activities there, but the priorities that are identified in the plan can really translate to other sources of federal support. And so whatever you put in that plan really can lead to some of those other opportunities for investment and support. And Mario talked a bit about this, but really the plan is an opportunity to listen to a diverse set of stakeholders and inform civic leaders, and then help align leadership around the community. And I will say, Steve talked a little bit about this. I mean, we had done a lot of the input before COVID, which I was very thankful for. And then there had been a lot of data gathering that we were working on over the winter and early spring when COVID hit. And then we realized that that was going to have a huge impact on a lot of the issues and things that we had talked about with the community and that was present in the data. So we have been spending actually a lot of the time since then to kind of look at what we had learned and then think about what has changed or what has been really impacted by COVID-19, because we know the impacts are very tied to economic and public health and all of the things that we've seen here. And then it's also aligned with this regional analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. So that was also occurring at the same time. That plan was actually posted in November, and so it is available on the city's website, but we did work with that team a little bit on some of the outreach on housing issues. And so I would encourage you to check that one out as well. We can include a link. So the process, this is the process that we followed. We started in mid-2019, really kicking off with public input and community engagement. So this timeline kind of goes backwards from where we are today. So the draft is open now for public comment through February 9th. 2020 was really spent on this data collection, analysis, drafting, and editing. And then 2019, we were focused on the public input and community engagement. So final submission to HUD is expected in the next month and a half or so. Most of the plan is done. It's just really then collecting this input and incorporating that into the plan. And note that the CARES Act did extend the deadline for this. Originally, this was supposed to be submitted by late spring of 2020, but given what had happened, HUD had indicated to jurisdictions that they could extend. And so this allowed us to put those impacts in. And so when you think about from a 5-year plan process, that's actually really critical, because as much as you can put in priorities related to what we're seeing with the impacts of COVID, that allows then the city to have those in their plan already. And so, we know 2 years from now that we will still be dealing with that. And so what kind of resources would we potentially use or need for that? We did create a website. So you see the public and we've been sharing that with you all to kind of host a lot of the information related to the plan and the process. So what is included? I will tell you all, it is a nice paperweight. It's about 240 pages of analysis, assessment, data, some regulatory and compliance related information. So, but here are the ways that you can sort of think about the plan. There is a needs assessment. So that talks about the needs in the community along a very, I would say, prescriptive set of areas. So this is HUD's plan process. They have the structure, but we do feel like it's a great opportunity to actually leverage the information we have around housing and community and economic development and create a framework, if you will, for a lot of those activities. There's also a market analysis that talks about the resources, the groups, the organizations, the government agencies, all of the things that are available in our community to actually do this work. And there's also a strategic plan, which then takes that information and kind of describes the geographic priorities, what the priority needs and goals are, the anticipated resources, and then the strategies. And this is where you sort of see, I would say, maybe more of the regulatory framework really come in. But it is also a way for us as a community and the people who do the work in this sector to pull out how we can align our work. And then public engagement is a really critical part of this plan. This is something that HUD really wants jurisdictions to make sure that it is community informed. And so that's why we spent a significant amount of time really making sure that we were trying to reach as many citizens and groups and professionals to share their view. And along with that, what is all in the plan? So we collected and then analyzed and then integrated a variety of different data sets. And so in the plan itself, you'll see there are a number of housing and community development data that is actually provided by HUD. So that's usually census-based or the most recent American Community Survey 5-year. I will note that a lot of those housing tables are pretty outdated because the system that they put this plan in still hasn't been updated the most recent 5-year. However, we decided to keep that data there, but then throughout those sections, we use more recent data. And so that's where you see a lot of this other research come in, both from providers, but also, you know, policy groups and things like that. And so I think the thing to know is that while some of the data you might seem rather old, unfortunately, this plan was being created at the end of a census. So we were collecting new census data while this plan was being put together. In an ideal world, we would be doing this a year from now where we would have more relevant data. But so just one thing to note, but there are parts throughout where we note that, you know, we did some additional analysis. We also did some backwards trend looking to sort of see if anything had changed significantly. So you see, these are the main sources and special shout outs. I think I've been saying this to everybody in the sector for the last year, but we have had some really great research done in the last 2 years alone around housing and community development issues. And so we highlight a few, but the Housing Affordability Report that Department of City Development did, Community Advocates Public Policy Institute, Home is Where Our Health Is, and then the Policy Forum's recently, the Foundation Report really provides such a strong framework for this plan. Public input. So these are the main components of what public input looked like. We did a survey that was both electronic, so people could fill that out online, but they could also submit a paper version. We were at community events. We had a short version and a long version. We worked with our neighborhood strategic planning organizations in 4 major target areas to collect surveys and talk with residents about the issues. We worked with a lot of our other organizing groups. You'll see some of the events and associations we reached out to. And then we also had a task force, which I know a number of the members are on this webinar today, and we thank you for your service there. You provided really some critical input last March, of all things. I think our meeting was 2 or 3 days before everything shut down. But that was like a really well-informed conversation, that particularly around the strategies in the plan and what we should make sure was included. And then we had some other issue-based focus groups that we hosted that were open to the public. So I will note too, the website, when we were promoting the plan and the survey, was available in English, Spanish, and Hmong, as well as the survey tools. So both electronic and in paper. So, and PowerPoints, there's some overview, and those are all linked in the plan under the appendix. You can access the 3 overview PowerPoints that we were sharing that were translated into Spanish and Hmong too.
Christy, real quick.
Yeah, here.
Nope, you're already there.
Okay. Yes. How did we do? So we were at 29 community meetings. And so I would say also, in addition to that, there were a lot of one-on-one and stakeholder meetings that our team was doing. We also had Marcus White and Pa Spancia working with us last year, who were really helping us extend into different parts of the community. During that time period, we had over 1,000 website visitors. I promise they were not all me going to check to see what was on the website. And then we had nearly 1,200 completed surveys. We also tracked in the survey where responses were coming from. So you see the top 10 zip codes listed there, which I feel like is a pretty good representation of our city. And it's not on these slides, but there are in the appendix, you can link to this community survey results, and you'll see the demographics of survey respondents, which by the end of our survey collection period actually aligned very well with the demographics of our city. So I don't know, Tim or Una, if you wanted to weigh in on that, because we really tried to make an effort to get as much of a reflection of our city as we could with those.
Well, I think we did an awesome job. My video won't start for some reason right now, but I think we did an awesome job. We really worked, and thank you to the NSP groups and some of the community organizations that put us in front of their residents. We couldn't have done it without people in the communities reaching out to their neighbors. So we're real proud of the response. And even though it didn't get to my 1,500, we got doggone close.
Yeah. And we actually had a really high youth response too. So again, that was through our task force and our NSP agencies, which was really great because, you know, we talk about that more in the, I would say the report itself or the plan, but youth issues really were a concern across a lot of different groups and topics. And so, you know, and that's a big part of the public services category of the plan, as well as how the resources are used. So, you know, that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so we are going to talk about how to access the draft. So I think, Tim, it might be your turn to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let me know if you want me to stop sharing or if we want to, you know.
Let's, well, you can just, I mean, you access it just by going to the ConPlan website and clicking on those links.
Yeah, look at that.
Actually, if you go to, Christy, I think, is this the latest version? This is not the latest version.
Oh, no, it's not. That's an old screenshot. You know what? Here, let me.
Here, I could, do you want me to share the screen then?
Yeah, why don't you do that? I forgot to do that Thursday.
A link to the website in the
chat.
if he wants to click
Yeah.
through.
Yes, we
Thank you.
encourage you if you can. Jessica just posted the link, but feel free to go to the site. And it's also on the CDGA website page too.
Yeah, it's super straightforward. You can click on this. This will download a draft of the plan. It just download. That gives you a, I'm just going to pull that up here. It's going to give you a lovely PDF, which is very large. Looks something like this. And as your computer's loading it, you can click on all these links and it will take you to the respective parts within the table of content. So this is the PDF download. I'm not going to go through all 241 pages right now. Or you can click on this link and this will also take you to a nice web-based version of it, which is exactly like the PDF. You can look through this, you can click on any one of these and it will take you to the respective parts, right? So I just clicked on this and it takes you down to MA05. That was the one I clicked on. As far as offering feedback, there's a few ways of doing it. One is you can send emails to comment@complan.org or complanmke.org, or you can just type in your comments right here and let us know. This part down here is on this form is optional. So those of you who are really overachievers and want to let us know where exactly in the plan your information applies, it would be much appreciated if you can do that, but know that that is not required. So effectively, you just come in, you can look at one of these two versions and then either send us an email here, or you can fill this form in with feedback. So there's a couple ways of doing it. I think that's, unless there's any questions, I think that's everything, Christy.
Yep. And you know,
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one of the things that we've done, because we are in COVID and we learned to be contact free and safe, is that we really set this up where you can go in and navigate to your point of interest. We know that it's a great paperweight and you may not want to go through everything. So for instance, if you want to know what's going on in housing, the need for housing, you want to go to NA10. Then if you want to figure out what we're really doing with housing units, you might want to go to market analysis 10. We had quite a bit of fun with the N's and the M's during this work. So we have nicknames for both of those areas, but we're not going to share them with you. But I encourage you to play with this site. It's safe. You've got a little time. You're kind of at home. Really look around in your area of interest to see the data and to ask questions. All the comments that you share with us will be cataloged, analyzed, and supplied to HUD. So no comment is too big or too small. And we really, really want you to do it yourself, and other like-minded citizens that may be interested, reach out to them as well.
I'll
Okay.
just add to that really quickly. Comments aren't, they're submitted as is, so we don't go through and edit them. So just so everybody's aware, whatever you enter will be submitted as is verbatim. So there's no synthesizing on our part or pulling out something over another.
No, we really review them with the idea that if there's like something that rises to the top, like a lot of people are saying something, there seems to be consensus on something, maybe it points out something that's missed in the plan, that we would basically take that feedback and maybe go look through that section and make sure that we incorporate that.
Yep.
You know, as much as I'd like to think, I have been joking, I would love some sort of community development and housing PhD after this project, after reading every page of this plan, and assessing all the data that wonderful people helped us with. But of course, I don't know everything. None of us do. So that's why we really need your help in terms of providing comments. You know, I'm not the expert in everything. In fact, I'm the expert of nothing, I think, after this time. Just know a lot about a little, or a little about a lot. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk through a little bit of our key findings here. And I will just note that we're not going to go in depth in the sections, because ultimately, you know, we really want you to be able to go and think about that. But there are some things that we learned, that we thought a lot about, and that we think really provide some context with the consolidated plan. You know, the consolidated plan covers, you know, housing and economic development issues in a really broad way, but it also focuses on specific groups and populations of people, and then specific challenges, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of those issues are really driven by demographics and, you know, who people are, where they live, where they work, all of that sort of thing. And so one of the things that, you know, we looked at it through both the research and then as well as the other reports and stuff, is that the dynamics of who lives in the city has changed since the last consolidated plan. In particular, the significant growth in the Latino Hispanic population. And this has been documented in a number of reports in our community over the last few years, but you can see that, you know, in fact, you know, a lot of the thinking with urban areas is like population going down, or how that influx works. Well, in the city of Milwaukee actually was sort of stagnant in terms of the last census. And a lot of that is driven by the growth of Latino Hispanics in our community. And this also was really highlighted in the affordability report at the end of 2019. Again, we cannot talk about housing and economic opportunity without acknowledging and thinking about the legacy of redlining practices and segregation, and how that is really manifested in deep inequalities in our region, including a persistent racial wealth gap. And I was thinking this morning about this, and that, you know, obviously that is a bit of a sea change in some ways over the last number of years about how people even think about this work. Like, any report you read now usually has disaggregated data by race. People are just thinking about that way. And so it allows us to really think deeply about what this looks like, and versus just looking around and knowing this is what it looks like, but like, how do we change that, right? And can we get into the weeds a little bit in these issues? I know at one of our projects at UWIDA, we're doing this around home ownership, and we're looking in the weeds at like who is lending and all this stuff, but it really does help you think through them. Well, how do we address that? But you cannot have a plan like this and not talk about that, right? So you will see some of that in the plan. Median household income, I would say the other driving dynamic that we see is that household income in the city has fallen over the last 2 decades. This also has been documented, but there is a real consequence for that in real dollars. And that also this results in a significant housing cost burden. And so when you think of this from a strategy standpoint, what do you do to address that, right? Is it building many more affordable units? Is it tenant-based, like, you know, rent assistance increases? Is it we work to increase wages in our community, right? These are the strategies that people think through, right? But that is the driving data point, is that people are just not earning as much as they should be, right? And so what are we going to do about that? the other, I don't want to call it a trend, because I think it has always been there, but there has just been this greater understanding, and I would say of how it applies about the intersection of housing and health. And so, I think sometimes those have operated in, I don't want to say silos because we say that all the time, but they are different systems, right? There's the healthcare system, and then there's housing and community development. But we really see the impacts of health and housing and how integrated they are. And so that also means in the last few years, we've seen a lot of different groups and stakeholders come together around that. And so I think that has been something that can really drive how we address our housing challenges in the city. And then lastly, the economic impacts of COVID-19 on low-income residents and communities of color cannot be overstated. And, this is something that was realized, I think, quite early in Milwaukee. Our public health department was already tracking this data along racial demographics, right? And I don't think it's anything we don't know, especially the people who work in the sector. But when you think about the housing and economic opportunity challenges that are already present, given what we just have in these previous 4 bullet points, that this really exacerbates, right? And so that is, again, why I feel, we did spend some time, much longer than we anticipated, really thinking through the data that we had around housing. And then what does that look like now when we think about the impact of the public health pandemic related to COVID-19? So before I move on, I want to ask any of the other panelists if they have anyone to add around key findings. Okay, hearing none. Strategies. So, as Una talked about, there's the needs assessment, the market analysis. You can see they have corresponding sections. And so the strategies are also built around that too. And so I addressed this a little bit, but so you have to talk about housing and economic opportunity in the context of both specific groups of people. So there are entire sections of the plan devoted specifically to those that are experiencing homelessness. There's a section of the plan that you have to talk about people with special needs. And as a community, you can basically bring forward who are those groups of people. And as we talked with a lot of service providers and residents, like these were the groups, the populations that really kind of came forward. So there's a whole grant, a funding allocation around individuals living with HIV/AIDS. And so we have to talk about their needs for services. Seniors and veterans and people with disabilities and formerly incarcerated individuals and immigrants and refugees also have specific challenges too. And so you see sections really devoted to that. There's also sections around lead-based hazards and how those can be addressed. So you can think of the plan as both thinking about groups of people, but then also the larger impacts of poverty. And so then you'll see sections that talk, there's like one whole strategy section, anti-poverty strategy. I mean, could you create a broader thing to talk about? And you'll see in the market analysis, non-housing community development assets. Again, we really did our best to try to be very comprehensive about what all the workforce related assets were and what the small business groups were and stuff like that. But it was really hard to do that in a way and not add about 400 more pages onto the plan. So you can sort of think about the plan itself. And again, think about what might be most relevant to you. If it's all of it, great. But if it's not, then the table of contents will really be your best friend. And then there's a real big component around the enforcement education of fair housing. This aligned with the regional analysis of fair housing impediments, but this is also a big component in the plan. And we do have some very high level summary of what was in that fair housing analysis. And then a lot of information about the work that some groups do in that space and how they support that. So is there anything about strategies before I move on that anyone else would want to add? Okay. So activities. So, at the end of the day, you have your strategies, you've talked about what the needs are, you've prioritized those needs, you've said what's in the community in terms of the market that might be influencing these types of things. And so what does this look like in terms of services and activities? Well, for many of you familiar with Block Grant and Home Dollars and HOPWA and ESG, the activities in the plan probably won't be a surprise. In fact, a lot of them are the activities that have traditionally were in the previous consolidated plan. And so you see, we've organized them in 3 different areas: economic opportunity, housing, and then neighborhood revitalization and quality of life, which is sort of like, I kind of was thinking about it for a long time as like the everything but the kitchen sink category, but it really is that this is where the community input actually process is really important, because it's such a broad category, but that's where you can get a sense of where people think the priorities are. And so things like community safety and youth services, small business assistance, resident engagement and organizing and legal services, public spaces, this is where those really kind of come to light. Housing activities, probably to me, those are like the same activities, they're HUD goals, but at the same time, the way you may go about those activities in your community may look different. And so I will say in the strategies, we really tried to bring forward some of the newer thinking opportunities. So there's a lot of interest in shared ownership models and more rent assistance programs and things like that, right? So we really tried to bring those forward, but at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this in a minute, we had in the plan, you want to keep these somewhat broad, because that gets to what Mario spoke about. Is it's a 5-year plan. Gets broken down into these strategies. You have to say every year how you're going to do that. And you want to leave yourself some flexibility. You want to have to be a little bit malleable, like where you don't want to be so specific that it makes that you can't do something as things change over the 5 years. And then economic opportunity, everything in this plan really is built around the idea about that data point around median household income. You know, how do we create opportunities for people in the city to earn a family supporting wage and remove barriers to employment and services that help them access economic opportunity? And whether it is a housing program, it is a legal assistance, it's financial education, it's youth services, like that was really, I feel like, the driving thinking. And it has been for some time, because, you know, I feel like a lot of folks here on this call, this isn't anything new. So I think, oh, yes. And so I did put this slide, you know, for example, these were the top concerns in the community survey. And we did break them out by categories. So you have public services, economic opportunity, employment, and then the response within those, these were the topics that came up. So in public services, youth services was of top of mind for folks. In employment, it was job training and placement. What can we do to help people earn more income, get a job? Street improvements, I still think back, I think Marcus, who had read through all of the comments in the survey, our favorite quote in the community survey was, "My God, the streets." So I don't know, maybe this year it's a little better because there hasn't been as much driving on the streets. But yeah, street improvements.
I think, Christy, if I may, you know, holding those sessions to begin with when we first started were in the springtime. So
right.
Guess what? Street improvements top of mind for everyone.
So, yes, my God, the streets. Still the best quote. You know, safe and affordable housing, both, you know, people really know that that is a challenge and our issue. We live in a city with beloved but older housing stock. So, you know, there's concerns there as well. And then assistance for people experiencing homelessness, eviction prevention, for housing enforcement too. So, you know, the strategies and the needs that we talk about, I feel like really align. We heard a lot from the community, but that was really influential. And it helped us think about how do you sort of lift up really the ways that you can sort of be strategic in these different categories. So before we go into next steps, I guess, I'll just break if there's any questions, since I've been talking.
We don't have any questions as of now.
Okay. So really, you know, what we'd love for you to do is share this with your networks. You know, if you work with other service providers in a specific area, you know, you can feel free to focus on a section and send us your comments. But it's really another opportunity to provide feedback. I remember our poll, you know, there was a significant group of people who didn't fill out a survey or come to a focus group. This is another version of that. You know, as in the comment period ends February 9th, so it will be available on the website. UITA, if you are in our email list. You will get our newsletter at the end of January, and we'll put another reminder in there for you. And as we talked about, all comments will be included. We won't edit anything. We will include them as an attachment, essentially. But we will look at them to think about if there is anything that we would change or adjust in the plan based on that. And then in early spring, look for a notice of the final plan. So once all the comments are done, we'll put a final sort of PDF together and post that. But I would say we also, one of the things our team talked a lot about is a lot of times this is a HUD plan that the city submits to HUD and then they really work off of. But it's huge and it's really hard to break out, what out of that could help actually inform some of the work that goes on in the community. And so we are going to be working on what we're calling topic takeaways, I guess, from assets. I don't know, we've come up with a couple terms, but the idea is we would take key areas of need: affordable housing, youth services, economic opportunity, homelessness, and sort of just pull out of the plan what were the major prioritized needs that came out in this plan, what were some of the market opportunities or things, and then strategies that rise to the top. And I would say sort of things, one of the things I've been thinking about too are like new and innovative ideas that we want to kind of create these 1 to 2 pagers on those and put those out there. And hopefully those will be a way for this sector to really take them and think about how their work aligns and how they can support and how they can work with the city. So particularly those of you that do receive funding through any of those funding sources, this can be a way for you to check back. And then as a technical assistance provider with the city and CDBG, UWIDA can work with CDGA to sort of over time, whether it's like during the funding allocation plan process or once a year, we sort of take those 1-pagers and sort of talk about what was the work that was done over the last year in that area. This actually lays a lot of groundwork for the next consolidated plan. Not like I want to think about the next consolidated plan ever, but so we'll be doing that, and you'll look for those in early spring. So if you came to this webinar or you're in our network, you should get a notice once those are available. So I think.
Okay, Christy, there is a question from someone. They asking, how are we looking at coordinating the consolidated plan with the community comprehensive planning that's going on? And then the other one was, I think, Jessica, did you get the other Q&A?
I did. I sent a link directly to the survey results for that.
Right.
Okay. Oh, good. How to access the community survey results?
Yeah, it's actually, FYI, everybody doing some live editing. It's really easy to navigate to the survey results. They've always been in the appendix, but they're right on the homepage of the ConPlan website now on the right-hand side. So I would definitely encourage you guys to go in there and poke around. Tim did a really good job of putting together a presentation and then some of the raw data too, but in a little bit more manageable way to review it. So Talia, I think I addressed your question there.
Okay.
Yeah, you did. And so I want to go back to the one about how is this, do we have any plans, or how do we think it can coordinate with the community planning efforts that are going on?
Yeah. So I'll just say, first of all, we do list those as a resource. Like we were looking at the comprehensive plans that the city does. We know that, like, for example, the Fond du Lac and North area plan is being updated. And so, I would definitely say that's been infused into this, because particularly in that process, that's the current one that's happening. There is, that's where some of these new and interesting ideas are coming out about how to address housing and community needs. And so, yes, so I would say the plan, I wouldn't say necessarily expressly links, but we do refer to how the city connects with their comprehensive area plans. And then I think the early feedback and strategies that are coming through some of those area plans that are in review you'll see some of those same strategies in the consolidated plan, right?
Right.
And I would say DCD too has been, engaged and helped it. They're one of our data sources. And so we have shared this with them too and talked about how this can also help support their efforts to do a housing framework.
Chrissy, let me add that what I hope happens, community members and panelists, community members in particular, when you're starting some type of strategic planning conversations in your communities and organizations, use this plan as a reference guide, much like the way we used other plans to get to this point. You'll find when you get to our bibliography, when it's all done, you will find that we have amassed just a library of data. So to your question, panel attendee that asked, how do we intend using it? We're hoping that you will use it and refer to it and ask questions about it and try and get it into or have a discussion in your planning sessions out in the community about how this integrates with what you're trying to do. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but we certainly think that you'll find pretty timely information, at least for the next 18 months. This will be pretty timely information if you're undertaking any type of planning in your areas. So how it gets done, we're not mandating that you use it, but we're encouraging you to take a look at it and get familiar with it. So the data there can be beneficial to you.
And that's where I think the topic takeaways, like these issue-based ones, we think will be the most helpful, because it's the place to start. Like if you are looking at different strategies that it might be in the plan related to affordable housing, you can start with that and then go into the plan itself, for more detail. But to Una's point, it's not a mandate for other groups, but the idea is you want them to be aligned and you want people to be working off the same framework. And I think there's a lot of interest in the city, but as well as in the community and economic development sector in doing that. So the bibliography, and I'm glad Una brought that up, that's in the appendix. It's pretty extensive. I think we go back to 2013, looking at a bunch of different plans, including not just the area plans, but also regional plans. So the Vision 2050 regional housing plan, the assessment of fair housing impediments. Like there's a lot of great research and information around this. And I personally feel like it's sort of all kind of coming together at the right time, where we're at a point where, in particular in the last couple of years, there's been so much really good research and thinking done around these issues, where we're all, in a sense, now really starting from the same point of information and strategies and agreement. It seems like there's a lot of consensus, I think. Now, there might not always be consensus on how to do this stuff, but I think when you talk about where we are in terms of housing and housing cost burden and the economics of this city, I think people who work in community economic development, I think, are all really on the same playing field, if you will.
And Christy, let me add one other point, if I might. I mean, I spend a lot of time, obviously, working with nonprofits and writing grants. Let me tell you that this comp plan will be very helpful for you when you're looking up information to talk about what is happening in the city, to make certain case studies, and to do overviews about what's happening in your neighborhoods. So even from that standpoint, even though it's not a grant document, but you can find germane information, if nothing else, about the background of the communities that you're serving. So again, I encourage you to get familiar with it.
So if there are no other questions, I guess we're near the end. I don't know if any of Steve or Mario, if you wanted to say anything before we officially sign off.
I'm just gonna go back to what Una stated. This will quickly become a master document. For those of you who have not utilized it in the past, it does become kind of the go-to document for federal funds. We've actually used this in the past 4 years for FEMA applications. Even currently, we're using it, the data from it, to say how we actually have a network that feeds into our planning process. And just to go back to that question on the city's planning, a lot of the city planning, which our Department of City Development Planning Division, we utilize their data sets, as Christy and Una stated. But this also becomes a document that we work from to start new strategic plans for targeted areas in the city. And as you all may know, pretty much 80% of the land mass for the city of Milwaukee has a planning process involved. It might need to be updated, like Fond du Lac, the Fondi plan, but we have a base, and we've had multiple meetings or multiple plans that have been set in place. So this just becomes a base, and please utilize it. And if you find more feedback, as Christy has said, we always are taking feedback on this because, and Mario also alluded to, this is 1/5. Every year is 1/5 of this plan. So as we start to look at what's going on in our community and the timeliness of what this plan is coming out now, 2022 could look different. And our emphasis, we might be reconvening to look at how we look at things as far as housing, addressing the number of, just for example, the number of units for affordable housing might shift. And the number of units that are for private housing might shift due to the downturn and individuals' ability to pay high for high-end condos or apartments. So we just really need to stay firm with this one, but the timeliness of this and your involvement is so good at this time to have this in place. And I'm very thankful for you, Wita, convening this and sticking to it, because it was a tough road. I also just would like, in closing for myself, want to thank Jim Hill, who was a huge advocate and a consultant working with us with area development for the analysis of impediments to fair housing, which was one of the largest in the nation, covering more than 3 counties. And I would like to also thank those jurisdictions who were involved with that: West Dallas, Wauwatosa, Waukesha, and the counties that were involved, Milwaukee County and Waukesha County, and even Jefferson County, that had input into this. More than just input, they were active members of a consolidated team. So just thankful to all of them, and things can happen when good people all work together. So thank you all. And on behalf of the mayor, I'm very excited about this getting pushed forward and your input into this plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I will just add, there was a question about how the comp plan will be incorporated to the interagency housing plan that was discussed earlier this week. And I will say that we actually have talked to the Department of City Development about that. So, we've talked to them about the work that's incorporated into the consolidated plan, and all that information really is a strong foundation for creating that interagency housing plan. There's just been a lot of really great information. So yes, we are, making sure that they have, that they are in the loop and they can use this information. Basically it's the same way that we were able to use their affordability report information. The city departments, they work together and they said, hey, just because DCD did that report doesn't mean we can't put a lot of that information into consolidated plan. So, but yes, that is the thing. So, if there's anything else, we will sign off. We do want to say thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We know a lot of us are, it seems like we just go from call to call to call. But so we appreciate you taking the time to learn about this. We will send you a recording and the slides. You can also go to the websites there. They should be up this afternoon. If you have any questions or any follow-up, you can use the comment@complanmk.org. You can also email me. My email address is right there as well. And, we are happy to work with you all and appreciate your interest in the consolidated plan.